Welcome to the Stewart Mathieson Meets Podcast, episode 3. I'm speaking today with Cheo, who's a sales coach based out of Boston, Massachusetts. I'm looking forward to hearing more about your story, Ken, and hopefully you can bring some value to the audience about sales coaching and your experience with all the clients and the businesses you've worked in. Looking forward to it. I think it'll be a good one.
Yeah, myself too. I'm looking forward to this also.
Awesome.
Thanks for
Awesome.
having me.
So it'd be great to get a brief summary of you, just how you would describe yourself, how you would describe who you are, what you've done, just wherever, whatever you think is sort of relevant to anyone listening.
Yeah, well, I'm a sales trainer and a coach. That's really what we are at our sales coach. And originally I was trained as an engineer, and so I have sort of a technical background. However, I was really in sales management for 21 years. And then, in 2005, my company was being acquired, and I decided, because I was a single parent and commuting to my work, and I wanted more flexibility, and I wanted to do my own thing. So I decided I wanted to buy a business, and I'm looking around at different businesses, and I ended up, the only thing that really was striking balance for me was sales training to leverage my experience. And so I bought a sales training franchise and started in 2006. And then in 2013, I broke off and started my own brand, called it Our Sales Coach. And that's how I got to where I am today. So we've been doing this for, a good, 17 years. And, really worked with a lot of really interesting companies in different sales environments, and it's been fun, really learning with them and helping them to learn how to be more efficient and effective.
Yeah. Do you think the sales game has changed a lot over the last 10 or 20 years with technology?
Oh, totally. Well, so when I got my first sales job, Google was formed 13 years later.
Right. Wow.
Nobody had a computer.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is dramatic. And because when I picked the phone and I called the decision maker, they would want to talk to me, because that's how they got information, what their competitors were doing, what's available in the marketplace. And it was important for them to talk to me. Now, you know people are doing their own research, with social media and sales enablement and marketing automation. Everybody does their own research, and people are educated too. So it's a completely different world. And the other thing is, in my industry, the sales enablement tools and how CRM technology and marketing automation has really give us the opportunity to be more efficient and effective. And the question is, how are we utilizing those opportunities? I mean, even in my business for training, there's tools that we're using that, so you could have, a web location where all of your training assets are located, and or mobile. We have also the opportunity to make it mobile. And the real question is, though, wait, how are you using the technology now, and how it's evolving, even with AI, integrating AI into knowing, okay, this person on our team needs this now, and how are we delivering that to them? So it's really changed the way we go to market, our customers go to market, but also how we deliver our services.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting to hear. So going back to the start, what got you into sales initially? You mentioned there that you effectively had to have an engineering degree, if I remember correctly, for
Yeah.
what you were doing at the start.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's because, like I said, I've been fortunate in my entire career. I've been able to follow trends. And, what happened is, I was an engineer for 5 years, but my engineering background was in designing and constructing power plants and doing industrial central plant design work. And what happened is, I was actually dating my ex-wife, and I was living in Connecticut, and she lived in Boston. And I decided, you know what, I'm moving back to Boston, and I landed a sales job because they were deregulating the electric industry. And California and Massachusetts were pioneers there. And so there was a huge opportunity for the local gas utility here in Boston to sell natural gas to power plants, because nobody was building a nuke and nobody was building a coal plant either.
Yeah.
Right? They're dismantling all of those. And so, and then I was brought in to manage a team to develop new markets. So we were getting involved in natural gas vehicles. And, so there was a trend. They also had passed the Clean Air Act. And there still is a trend towards, sustainable environment. And, went into that direction of, energy utilizing equipment and performance contracting. But that was my first sales job, and that led to sales management because of the trends.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, so you've got obviously a lot of experience in sales yourself, in sales management. One thing I'd be curious to ask you is, how do you think it's best to create a sales system that actually fits your product in your industry? Because there's a lot of generic advice out there on how to sell and how to have a sales system that isn't specific to any industries or products. How do you think is the best way to go about that?
Yeah, well, you know what? There's really three steps to that. First is your sales strategy. Okay. The second is what's your go-to-market strategy. And then there's the Salesforce design. Okay. And so, really, sometimes we don't really spend enough time on the first two steps, right? So what is your strategy? In other words, what is your market segmentation? Who is it you're really going after? And I find far too many times people are trying to be everything to everybody. And from that standpoint, if you're not really doing that analysis, it's flawed from the beginning. Because if you have different types of customers, their buying process could be completely different. So how are you going to design a sales strategy when two different market segments buy different ways? And you need people with different expertise. And the next part of that is not your market segmentation, but also your products. So different clients might want to be buying different products. And do you need people who have expertise in certain areas because of the product? So that's the first step. I mean, do you know what your market penetration is in those segments that you want, where your biggest opportunities are? There's an internal analysis and an external analysis. So what are really good at, and does your the targets that you're going after, do they, how does that match up with what they really need? And then the external part is what's happening out in the marketplace that provide opportunities for you to focus on. And so that's the first step. Then you can design a go-to-market strategy, right? Because you now know with those segments, who's the decision maker?
Yeah.
Okay. What do they care about? And how are we going to get their attention? And so, then you can pick the marketing and prospecting channels that will get conversations.
Yeah.
And be relevant to them. Okay. So then you have that go-to-market strategy. Now you can talk about what's your design. So really, who is it that you need to bring in to be able to be effective in getting those meetings, conducting those meetings, or even getting those calls and qualifying them for a meeting and conducting those meetings, and then really closing the deals. So what is their degree of specialization, for example? Or, is it really product-based, or is it market-based? Is it the geographic location? And what roles are there going to be? We talk about hunters and farmers, for example. Okay, well, that's important, right? But what do the hunters need to do, and who's doing that? And what are the farmers going to do? So we have manufacturers that we deal with, and they have clients all the time. And it's common that they have account managers. Well, these account managers spending a lot of time dealing with existing customers. They don't have enough time to go out and get new ones, or
Yeah.
they're not the right personality to go get a new one. So how are you going to develop that new customer interaction and develop new opportunities and make sure that you're continuing to grow at a pace that meets your ability to deliver?
Yeah.
And so what happens is a lot of times we're jumping to step 3. Oh, I need to hire a new salesperson. Well, they're not really thinking about, okay, what does that person really need to be doing? And if we want them to be doing everything, then are they going to be ending up really being efficient with their time
Yeah.
or being effective? Okay. Or do we need to split up the roles? Because they don't, the worst case scenario is they're really putting the wrong person in the wrong job and they're just destined to failure.
Yeah.
But mostly it's because they didn't really do enough in the first 2 steps.
Yeah, I've seen that play out in 1 or 2 companies as well, especially when they get funding, and so they have way more money than they've ever had. So the first thing they want to do is spend it, and they spend it on maybe 2 or 3 sales development reps that really don't know what they're doing, and the company doesn't really know exactly what they should be doing, but they had to spend the money somewhere, so they pick the option where they can spend the most, the quickest. And you're right. And, when they don't have those first couple of steps in place, it never goes the way that they expected it in their head. So, yeah, I think you make a great point there. And obviously, with a lot of that stuff, with a lot of that training to get your sales development reps doing the right thing and your account managers as well, you believe very strongly in drip training, because if you have a lot of this information, a lot of this training that your people need, you don't want to give it to them all at the one time because they're not going to retain it.
Yeah. Research shows we as humans, we will only retain about 50% of the main content of a 10-minute speech immediately after it's delivered. 50%, 10-minute speech, and then, within a couple of days, maybe it's 25%, and so, it just boggles my mind that, sales trainers will come in and say, look, we'll customize a program just for you. And we'll come in, we'll do 2 8-day programs. Well, I don't care how smart your people are, you will not be able to retain 8 hours of information. I don't care how much interaction there is when they're doing that, you will not be able to know what to do with it. It's overwhelming. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean to say it doesn't make sense when you bring your whole sales team together, that you have somebody come in and work with them, maybe for 4 hours, maybe for 8, but you got to focus on really what they need and use the time where you're live to be able to, get them to practice and do things over and over again and provide coaching. So what we do is we give them an hour of training, just 1 hour, and it's interactive, and we give them the equal amount of coaching. So they get group coaching, and then they get group training, 1 hour, and then we schedule the next one. But with that combination of coaching and training, the coaching enables them to revisit what they've learned over and over again in the context of their sales environment. And with technology today, that's one of the great things that came out of COVID, is just the technology for video conferencing. The reason we're doing this and how we're doing this today has improved dramatically so that we can do that. And we can be really effective with sales teams all over the world, and they don't need to fly them around for them to get training. And so it really it's a lot more effective, and the coaching piece is critical, right? And so they get the coaching they need, because it's always the case that the individual people, their needs are all different, and so you want to give them the attention that they need where they need it.
Right. So you're saying training that's specific to the company and coaching that's specific to the individuals.
That's right. Yeah,
Interesting.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's
I think
how it works.
probably the reason that it's the system usually is all the information at once, or maybe not at once, but in two large chunks for you to retain that much of it. I think probably the purpose or the reasoning for that is because, before right now, yeah, you would have to fly out and you would have to do a day or a week or whatever it may be. And there was no way to do it this way, where it's, drip training, as you say, over a longer period of time. How do you think it's best if you're an organization and you're trying to train your people on whatever it may be, and you're not bringing in an external consultant? How do you think they're best to do that in-house?
Well, you want to develop coaches. Okay, so it really, if you uh there's if you have a sales manager that's
Yeah,
also selling, okay, the question is how much time are they really spending with your sales team? Depending on, if you have, like, say, up to, 7 or 10 salespeople, you don't have time to be selling and really giving them what they need. And so, you want to be making sure that you're developing coaches out of your managers.
mm,
Critical. Okay. So how are you going to coach somebody? Well, do they have the information they need? Okay. So do they have the data to really understand, hey, Johnny's stuck. Where is he stuck? Okay. And how can we get him unstuck? Or, Sally's doing great. How can I make her more efficient?
yeah,
Where is the opportunity to improve her efficiency? Okay. As salespeople, we have one asset, our time. How are they spending their time? Okay. And you need the data to be able to determine that. And you need to coach them to really understand that their time is being, spent efficiently. The other piece is, how effective are they?
mm, yeah, yeah. And speaking of how effective they're going to be, I know that you think that tracking is a huge component of that, and you think sometimes a lot of salespeople or sales teams track the wrong things. Could you elaborate a bit on that? What should they be tracking that normally they aren't tracking? What are they spending too much of their focus on, would you say?
Yeah, sometimes they're tracking the wrong things. Sometimes they're not tracking anything. You know,
Mm,
and it's crazy that companies invest gobs of money into CRMs, and then the salespeople don't even use it,
yeah.
and or they're not getting the information that they need to be effective, or really understanding how it's going to help them make more money. And so, everybody really tracks sales, right? You have to track sales. Why? Because you need to invoice your customer.
Of
And
course.
why do salespeople track sales? Because that's how they get paid, right? But from that point, it's like proposals. Okay, so, well, first of all, sales efficiency is evaluated in ratios, just like your financial performance. So if you're not really usually, I find my clients have the data they need. They're just not using the ratios. Okay.
Mm,
And it's like, okay, yeah, well, I'm very efficient with my bookkeeping, but you're not even looking at your gross margin or your net profit or your inventory turns. You never even look at that. Why would I? Right? No, of course
yeah.
you do. That's how you evaluate your financial performance. Same thing with sales, right? What is your proposal close rate? How many first meetings does it take for you to close a deal? How many contacts does it take for you to get a meeting? How many leads do you need before you close a deal? Or how many leads does it take to get a meeting? And this is how you evaluate performance. Okay. And so everybody tracks sales. They track proposals, I hope, because you need to follow up. Okay. Do you know what your close rate is? What's your close rate on proposals? And this is where it even starts to get a little more negative, because a lot of times, I have clients that will budget price things multiple times over the course of the sales process. So they're like, oh, I can't track that. Well, yes, you need to track that, because it's just, how do you make it, if effective and useful? And then, all right, if you're not getting proposals out, well, how many meetings are they having? How many first meetings are they having with new opportunities? How many of those are with new customers, prospective customers, versus existing customers on new opportunities? Okay. And then how many contacts are they making, or how many leads are they developing on their own, or what are they doing to convert leads that the company provides for them? Okay. And how that all gets tracked. Because, if everyone on your sales team is nailing their monthly revenue goal 100% of the time, every month, hey, life's good, right? You don't need a lot of coaching then. Now the question is, okay, how many of those opportunities are with net new prospects versus existing customers? Okay. But if you're not meeting your sales goal, now it's like, all right, well, how many proposals are they doing? What's their proposal close rate? Right? Because if they're throwing out a lot of proposals and not closing deals, now you know where to help them. Right? What are they doing? How are they delivering those proposals? Who are they proposing to? Are they proposing to a decision maker? Drill into that. Okay. But if they're not doing proposals or quotes, all right, well, how many meetings are they having on new opportunities? Because if they're having a lot of meetings and they're not turning into really opportunities or proposals, or who are they meeting with? What's the conversation they're having? And, do we need to make some changes there? Okay. But if they're not having meetings, it's like, all right, what are they doing to have conversations? Are they making contact with people? How are they doing that? And because if they're having a lot of contacts and it doesn't turn into a meeting, okay, well, what's that conversation? How are they really, are they asking for the meeting? Let's help them to get more meetings. But if they're not having meetings, okay, what are they doing to produce leads? Are they doing prospecting activities? Are they keeping themselves accountable for doing those prospecting activities? Are their channels effective? Is their conversation, is their dialogue effective? Okay, so, through those ratios, we could determine how effective our team members are, and then, where how efficient are they? Where can they really improve, and how can we coach them to continue to improve?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a lot of stuff to track if you're a sales manager, and you're kind of juggling between trying to get your people to track everything they should be tracking. You're trying to spend some time looking at those stats, what needs to be improved, what needs to be changed as a whole or for certain individuals. You're trying to maybe balance it and planning for the future and coaching as well. If you're a sales manager and you've got all these things on your plate, what's the best way to try and manage all of that and be as effective as possible to get the best results from your team?
Yeah, so you may not need to be focusing on all that data, right? It depends on the sales process. It depends on the person and what their role is. And so, you need to just have enough information to really identify where the gaps are in effectiveness. And then, be able to coach them on that and train them effectively. And so, identify, and really it depends on how your team is structured. Okay. So maybe there's, you mentioned, the BDRs, for example. Well, their job is really just to open the doors and set appointments. Okay. And so you're in that initial part of the opportunity funnel. And, how are you making that effective? And then, and then maybe the account executives, okay, how efficient are they in conducting sales, meaning navigating the decision process and, making sure they're closing deals and shortening the sales cycle. So, you're evaluating the data based on where the gaps are and who the individual team members are, and then how they're working together. Okay. And then through that coaching, the salespeople really understand, because you're using the data and helping them to see the data, how that's really helping them to improve. Okay. And what's going to motivate them to like do that thing that everybody hates to do and get the data in there on a regular basis, on a daily basis? Well, understanding how it's helping them and getting them to see, this is where coaching comes in, to see how they're improving and how the data and their manager is helping them to improve, because everybody wants to be making progress. Okay. And so learning and continuing to contribute are two of the biggest motivators, in addition to making money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. That's I think that's a lot of great sort of information on the management side of things. And if you're a sales manager, how do you create or work with your team to have the best sort of and most productive environment as possible? On the actual, for any sales closers, a big thing that you like to talk about is how a lot of businesses and a lot of sales closers, they think they know why they're different. They know why the business is different, why the product's different, what their USP is. But you also think that they're probably wrong, and their customers would say it's something different, and they buy for a different reason. How do you think the sales closers or the businesses can extract that information so that they actually know how they're different and how they can utilize their USPs more?
Yeah, well, that's a question we don't ask often enough.
Mm,
And, I tell my clients, every single one, I tell them, look, you got to be asking your customers, how am I doing? Are
mm,
you happy? Right? Because if they're not happy, then maybe you're at risk for losing them. You want to make sure they're happy, not just happy. Everybody expects you to provide good service on time in a professional manner. And I got news for you. That does not differentiate you. If you're
yeah,
not doing that, they're going to leave.
yeah,
Okay. And so we need to be doing that. Okay. But we need to really understand that they are happy. Okay. Once you get into that conversation, then it's easy to find out, ask more questions about that. What do you think really makes us different? Why'd you buy from us in the first place? Would you do it again? And here's the real question we want to get to. It's like, listen, if you were going to recommend us to somebody else, it's like, you really need to go talk to John at XYZ company, because what goes after because? Because this is what they're really thinking, is the value you provide to them. And we don't, your best resource for understanding that is your customers.
yeah,
And customer A may have a different view than customer B. And, the decision maker X at customer A might have a different view than decision maker Y at the same company. Okay. We need to understand all of that, but we really don't drill down. And there's 5 areas where you could be different, right? So here, first is value. What is the value? What is the perceived value, right? Do you actually provide a better product? Is it a better product? Because if it is a better product, then it should be more expensive. If
mm,
you're viewed as a more expensive product because the quality is better, what is it that about the quality? And perhaps if they think you're providing a better quality product at a higher price, then they may expect more attention. So how are you delivering that attention to them, right? Or sometimes this is the one that really gets me: service. Oh, we provide better service. Really? Okay. So I can then go talk to your competitor and they'll say, listen, you got to buy from me because our service stinks, right? We provide seven. That's why you need to buy from us, because we have lousy service. No. Okay. But maybe it is service. Sometimes it's not service, really, it's availability.
yeah,
What happens when I need attention? What kind
yeah,
of attention do I need? right? Do you have a product that they need to be educated on? Okay. And this gets me when you talk about software. It's like, they software companies, they understand you need a sales enablement person, you need customer service people to help them onboard them properly, and they're using the product properly, but a lot of times they do it through videos, and it boggles my mind. We go to these great videos, but they talk a mile a minute, right? And I'm still trying to figure out step 1, and they're on step 20. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, slow down. and and then you want to go back and revisit it. I know it was step 5. I need to learn more about, and then you can't even find the video you watched, right? And so, how easy is that? Well, contrast that with, look, we know this is going to be important to you. We want to do some live training for you so we can really show you where to focus and how to get set up properly with the software in the first place. You know what I mean? So it could be how you train them, or I have clients that they sell manufactured products where they need to be maintained. So I have a company, for example, that sells pumps, and they provide the service on the pumps, and their competitor doesn't. So at least on the replacement market, they're the go-to, because they're in there helping them solve little problems along the way and maintaining the pump. So when it comes time to buy a new one, guess who they go to, right? And or it could be how they buy. How does the customer want to be interacted with, or how they buy? For example, maybe they have different locations and they buy individually in those locations. So there's people in each location you need to have a relationship with, or maybe they buy centrally. And we want, the tension here, and there's multiple decision makers in one location, and then how you interacting with them at the rates and level that they want to be interacted with. So maybe that's it, or, and then how do you develop the relationships and maintain those relationships? So, I have clients that sell really complex environments, like I have a medical device manufacturer. They have to actually design a piece of equipment just for their customer, okay, unique to them, and then make the parts at the volumes that they need when they need them, okay? So for them to steal someone else's customer, they need to fire that person they're using. Hey, I know you designed and built that piece of equipment just for us. Throw it away. We're going to somebody new, right? They have to have a real problem with quality, with deliverability, and resources that to be able to do that. So it's really a relationship that once it is developed, it's hard to develop, but once it's developed, it's hard to break. Okay. And so that, is a differentiator in itself. So where is the, your differentiation could be in any of those 5 places, but it's not as much, it's important to know what it is, but it's also important to know, number one, how do you communicate that? And secondly, how do you really deliver on that? And third, and the most important thing, what trumps everything, is how does the customer perceive it? And what is really important to them? And you can't find out without asking.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I like the way you break down each part and how you can sort of figure out what one specifically it is that makes you the best choice. I think one thing that obviously, you believe in selling value, not features, and I totally agree. I think at this point, though, a lot of people, when they're doing that, because usually businesses only have a few things they're trying to do, and they all revolve around making money. When you go to the value, it's always something that contributes to either making more money, making money faster, something around that. And so I think a lot of companies, when they're trying to sell value as opposed to features, they just sound like every other company. They just sound like every other competitor, So the easiest example is if you're, let's say you're a marketing company, you're a lead generation company, you can say, well, we'll get you leads. That's the value, you know. But all your competitors are the same. Whereas you could say, well, we'll get you leads through Facebook, we'll get you leads through LinkedIn or Google or something like that. And then so the differentiator usually is the features as opposed to the value. So how do you think that's the best way to get that across, but still sell the value so that the lead is actually, going to see the value, to put it plainly?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's use that example, Stuart, because first of all, if I'm saying, okay, is this credible? Is
Hmm.
this person really going to give me leads? Well, the first thing is, how well does he understand my market? So what's the process they're going to go through to really deliver those leads? And does that make sense based on what I know about my customers and my market? And then how once you sort of high level, communicate that makes sense to me in my world, then it's like, all right, what do I think the results will be? Or
Yeah.
tell them, the more you can guarantee it, the better, right? Because when you guarantee it, and the question is what's behind the guarantee, then that can be a differentiator. But also, what you're in that conversation, what you're really doing is uh, you're narrowing your expertise and you're showing that you're an expert. People want to do business with experts. So, you can differentiate yourself based on focus, narrow focus. Hey, you in your business, that's who I do business with. Nobody
Yeah.
else. And by the way, because of that, I've got some credible customers here, name brands that,
Yeah.
well, listen, if they're using them, they must be good.
Yeah.
And so it goes back to that step number one in the sales process. How are you segmented, and are you really an expert? And then how will you deliver that? And so that's how I think, you
Yeah.
know,
And I agree with you, especially on the point that what you were saying about working with, well, knowing exactly who your market is, and that's who you work with. And I totally agree. I think it's like one of the easiest ways to stand out, to pick one market, pick one pretty niche market, and that's exclusively who you work with. I think it's virtually the easiest way to build up trust and authority within the one market. I think the reason most people, usually individuals as opposed to companies where there's multiple decision makers, but I think usually the reason most individuals, so um, one person companies, I think the reason they don't do that is purely because it's such a mental block. There's that thing in your brain that says, well, if I'm making my market smaller, then there's less people I can sell to. And I think that's partially where the power of a coach comes in as well, where they know it's the best thing to do. They don't have that mental block, and they can push you on and encourage you to niche down and pick exactly who you should be working with, because it is such a mental block. But I think if you can get past that, it's one of the easiest ways to actually start generating more and better leads, at least from what I've found.
yeah, yeah, we try to get our clients working 2 to 4. And so, if you're a big corporation, may you need to have more than 2 to 4 markets you're in, perhaps, but each individual salesperson doesn't need to, right?
Yeah.
And so you could have each salesperson just addressing one market, but you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, and you don't need to. Like, so for example, we deal with SaaS companies and we deal with manufacturers. But so I could say, well, my market's manufacturing. Well, there's a gazillion SIC codes in manufacturing. We don't deal with all types of manufacturers. we can specialize in certain types of manufacturing. And, so when you say manufacturing is your market, you can actually have, 4 or so different segments within manufacturing that you focus on, and that could change over time based on where the opportunities are in the marketplace. What are the trends? Okay. And, so, but
Yeah.
you do want to focus, because otherwise, let's just say, all right, well, I want to deal with medical device manufacturers, or then you just say, well, I want to deal with defense contractors. Well, guess what? You're not going to go to the same place.
Mm.
You're not, let's say you want to go to trade shows. Are you going to find both at the same trade show? No, you're not. Is what's going to get their attention the same? No, it's not. Right? And so the more you have, multiple but fewer markets in that are synergistic, the more effective that will be. And then you can adapt and change.
Yeah.
based
What
on
made you focus on tech and manufacturing? Because a lot of people would say that they're quite different. What made you pick those markets in particular?
Well, with trends,
Trends.
right? Because right now, uh, manufacturers have a lot of need. Silicon Valley Bank, need I say more?
Mm.
Okay, there's a lot of pressure on sales teams to produce. And we got into it because there was a lot of opportunity here in Boston, San Francisco, right? So there's a lot of money, right? It's easier to follow the money in tech, because basically if you're developing a SaaS environment, you need to have some private equity money to be able to build your sales team, build your product, and and then so it's easy to follow that. So that's how we got into that. But manufacturing was because we were doing some training with the manufacturing extension partnerships. These are nonprofits that were formed back when Bill Clinton was president in the United States. He started throwing money at the states to train these family operated businesses, and we started doing sales training for them, and that's what really got us into manufacturing. There's also trends in there's a trend to pull manufacturing back into the United States and develop more manufacturing here, whereas foreign companies want to manufacture in the States because that's where the market is. Okay, so those are trends. And so I'm just following where the opportunity is. Coming out of the recession in 2008, I was dealing a lot with service companies, CPA firms, law firms. Why? Because, law firms they were growing at 10, 12% before the recession. Boom, recession comes. Now, coming out of the recession, they're growing at 4%. So they weren't going to their, partners and saying, hey, listen, we're going to cut your pay by 2/3. No, they were saying, listen, if you don't go out and get some customers, we're going to fire all your associates, and you're going to have to do all that grunt work they're doing. And so they would bring me in, and it's like, all right, who's really doing something? Who's got the potential? Because lawyers, usually, they got a mental block against their ethics professor said, don't sell, it's unethical.
Yeah.
And so, but who's actually really doing something? And let's work with them and bring in more of their ideal clients. And then that got me more into insurance companies and financial. And so we started working with banks. I still work with banks. There's opportunities there too, because banking, I don't know about you, but when's the last time you went into your local bank branch?
A while ago.
Yeah, right. We do our banking right here.
Yeah.
Right. So how are they reaching out to their customers? And so there's a need for training to get these people to go out and bring in new customers. And during coming out of the recession, I was dealing with the people who really were the salespeople. These are the commercial loan officers, the mortgage people. Now they've gotten pretty good at that. So it's the retail people who are used to sitting in the branch. Nobody's coming in the branch. Or how many times can you ask that same 50 people that come in every week, hey, can I help you with anything else? Right? They have to go out and get new ones, and they don't know how to do that. So that's where the opportunity is for me. And so, I just, that's how I got into the markets, because I'm in Boston. What's the market in Boston? What are the needs out there externally? That's why I'm in tech. That's why I'm in banking, and then that's why I'm in manufacturing.
Yeah.
Manufacturing is a little different.
Yeah, sorry, on you go.
Because manufacturers is completely different, because they built their businesses based on customers. They have customers, they pay attention to their customers, they deliver their customers.
Yeah.
But now it's getting more competitive, and they have account managers. The account managers are busy taking care of their customers, keeping them happy, but they're customer service oriented people. And two problems. Number one is they're so busy helping their customers, they don't have time to go out and get new ones. The second problem is they're service people, they're not salespeople. And so they're not getting enough new. And if they're not getting enough new, then they could, lose a big customer, or they could get their lunch, eaten by competitor who is being more proactive. So they realize they need to be more proactive. Well, how do they do that? They go get distributors who aren't even employees. And so they have distributors, and they have no control over what they're doing. And so they don't know how to manage that. So they decide, they're going to go get some direct salespeople, put them in regions that can work with the distributors and open some doors with them, which is smart. But how do they do that to make that effective? Right. And that's where we come in. And we help them with that strategy based on everything we talked about already.
Yeah.
Or maybe they just sort of take it all in house and they go completely direct. And they want to control the whole thing, which, does that make sense? Maybe, maybe not, maybe only in certain areas.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's very interesting. What I was curious to ask you, because obviously you've worked in all these different, or you have experience in all these different industries, and there's going to be a lot of differences in each industry, each type of business, each size, each product, all that kind of stuff. Where do you think, if you're a new salesman, all right, you're looking for a new, obviously there's a ton of people being laid off at the moment. What do you think are the best industries to go into if you're a salesperson? You're looking to find a company that you can make a lot with and you can grow with. What are the best industries to go into?
Well, okay, so there has to be a good market opportunity. Okay,
Of course.
What are people buying, and what's the opportunity out there? Second is what interests you. Okay, and you if you're really interested in a product, then you'll be more inclined to learn about it and learn about the marketplace. Okay. And then the third thing is what suits your personality. Okay. Because, different, people seem to think, well, all right, I need a salesperson. I need that A-type personality, in your face, competitive, like, A-type personality. Not always, right? What if you're selling to an engineer? We're selling to engineering people, and you don't, it's like, oil and water.
Yeah.
Somebody who's like in your face, like aggressive, going after, trying to sell something to somebody who's risk adverse and not communicative, not emotional. And so what is the activity you're going to need to do, and does it suit your personality?
Interesting. If you are, because you're right in that, I think salespeople, when people think of salespeople, they think of them with a certain attitude. They think of very outgoing, very confident, quite loud, that kind of thing. If you are a salesperson and you're not that way, you mentioned engineering. What do you think are the best industries to go into if you're that type of character?
Well, I mean, if you're so I got trained as an engineer,
Mm.
and I really when I only was only an engineer for 5 years, and then I got a sales job, and I'm like, huh, this sales stuff's easy, and I realized why I didn't really like engineering that much. But
Yeah.
today, young people today have a huge. I was talking to a marketing person, the other day, and she has two twin sons, and she was talking about all of the opportunity they had in high school to stick their toes into different really career level
Yeah.
things, and because we were talking about how they picked where they're going to college and what they're going to study. And so it's a different world today. I mean, we had math, science, engineering, and that was it,
Yeah.
right? English. So I again, you should be interested in what you're selling at least. And but if you're an engineering type personality, I'm not, it's going to be stressful for you to be in a sales role
Mm.
because you're not a people person, and so it'll be more difficult for you. Can you be effective? Can you be successful? Absolutely you can, but it's going to be harder for you, and
Yeah.
it's going to be take a lot more of your energy to be effective. And so it really helps if you do have a certain element of people orientation,
Mm.
to if you're going to be in a sales role. It also helps if you are somewhat competitive and direct,
Yes, definitely.
because sales is the only profession where you get rejected every day.
Yeah.
There's a tremendous amount of rejection, and you've got to be resilient enough to be able to handle that. And so sometimes when you're too heavy on the people part,
Mm.
that makes it hard for them because they're so people oriented that the relationship is so important to them that they take rejection more in a harder way,
Yeah.
so that the combination of being direct and being a people person, so that helps to balance that. Okay.
Yeah.
um so knowing that about yourself, you can decide, okay, is this the right role for me or not? If not, as an engineer, perhaps you want to be more of an account manager.
Mm.
You're certainly not going to be the hunter.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if as long as you're somewhat of a people person, but not necessarily a really go-getter type competitive, you could be a real effective account manager.
Mm.
And actually, maybe that you're better at that than the super competitive go-getter type person.
Yeah. I think what you were saying about the amount of rejection in sales, it's very true. And it's something that I've kind of grown up with. Like when I was 13, I started a clothing brand. And when I was 14, I was, getting the designs like imported from Pakistan and trying to sell them. I sold them into one shop in my town. And then I would try and sell them online and stuff like that. And one of the ways that I tried to sell it was door-to-door sales. And I don't know if that's ever been done before, selling t-shirts and hoodies door to door. But I tried it. And obviously, I think in my teens doing that and learning, because I don't know how many doors I would chap on in an hour, but quite a lot. And obviously, I would be lucky if I sold one in an hour, and the rest were just rejections. You're standing, you're waiting for someone to answer the door. You're looking at your watch. Nah, I don't think anyone's going to answer, over to the next house. And so I think for me, kind of having that experience early in sales, it kind of set a good tone of not taking rejection personally. and kind of not letting it bother me, you know. And I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of people, I don't know what the stat is, but it's something like 90% of businesses fail within the first, one or few years or something crazy like that. And I think one of the big reasons for that is not because the product sucks or because the marketing isn't very good or whatever it is. I think it's just the people that are the people that have started the company, and it's pretty much just always one person trying to juggle everything. I think the sales side of things is too brutal. They've worked a job where it's quite social, potentially it's quite positive, and then they start doing sales and it absolutely crushes them. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons that so many people go out of business so quickly that isn't really talked about, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Would you have any tactics for anyone like to get past that, to sort of not take it personally and deal with rejection in a positive way?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. There's nothing that I can say that makes that better. It just, getting rejected is always going to be a bad thing. And, and I'm not going to say, hey, so just get over it, right? It's just part of the program. And I think the best solution is to go out and get some wins.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing better than getting some wins to recharge your batteries. Okay. But the point here is not it's not that rejection you have to accept it. The important thing is to you're not focus on it. See, people what causes people to stop prospecting is that they focus on the rejection. What you need to focus on is what are the activities you need to do in order to get more opportunities. Because if you focus on those opportunities, those activities, instead of the results, then you had a successful day. If you did it, people will ask me this all the time. How do you keep your customers accountable? I don't keep them accountable. They need to keep themselves accountable. What I do is I help them figure out, okay, who are you going after? How are you going to get their attention? And what do you need to do? Okay, so now I'm on that step 2 of the process. What's the channels where you're going to get people's attention and get conversations? So what is it that you need to do to have those conversations on a regular basis? Okay. And then we chunk it down. What are the activities that you are committed to doing and how often? So you can keep yourself accountable for doing it. The point is, if you actually are doing them and on a regular basis, you will be successful. So you'll have the wins that counterbalance the rejection. Yeah. And you're focusing on the activities and you reward yourself because I did the activity. It was a successful day. And if you do it and then you track it, like we discussed, you can make adjustments so you'll on a regular basis. But prospecting is the kind of thing that if you don't do it, it doesn't affect anybody except you. And so all of my clients, they all want to help with time management. And the first thing I ask them is, do you plan your weeks? Because you can't make sure and keep yourself accountable for doing an activity that you may not like doing. Yeah. Because a lot of rejection, unless you plan your week, because this is the first thing that gets pushed off. And especially if you're a business owner doing everything, that's what happens. And so what happens is you get the roller coaster. Because you prospect, you get clients, now you're implementing, you're not prospecting. So 3 months down the road, you're like, I'm starving now. Okay. And this happens all the time. And they go, I'm coaching a client. They're like, yeah, I'm falling down. I'm not doing what I need to do. No, it's not now. It's like, how long does it take for you from you first meet a client to when they actually says, okay, let's go? Oh yeah, it takes about 3 months. Yeah, it's not what you're doing now. It's what you did 3 months ago.
Yeah.
What were you doing 3 months ago? Oh, geez, I was onboarding a whole bunch of clients. Yeah, right. Where was the prospecting activity? Okay.
Yeah.
When you're busy, you got to know, what do I need to do, if nothing else, and keep yourself accountable for doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you either do that or you have a very, very short sales cycle. And if you don't have one of those things, if you aren't consistent with it, or you don't have a very, very short sales cycle, then it's impossible to have a consistent flow of business coming in, you know? Because, yeah, like if it's a long sales cycle and you're not consistent with the leads, then of course you're going to be, they're going to be falling off when they shouldn't be. So the only way to combat that is by having a very, very short sales cycle, which is virtually impossible if you're selling something that is of a decent amount of value and has a decent price to it. I think people just sometimes they don't have that consistency because they don't believe in it. They don't believe the consistency is actually going to be worth it and they're going to eventually close the client. But yeah, it's something that you only see if you are consistent with it, and then eventually it plans out how you wanted it to, and then it's a lot easier to be consistent. But yeah, I think especially if you have a coach as well to keep you accountable there, or you have a sales manager, I think that makes it so much easier than if you're doing it on your own. You're desperately trying to keep yourself accountable, but you're thinking about other things, especially if you're self-employed, where sales is just one little part of the whole equation. Can be a pretty tough thing to navigate. But I think that's a great tip to kind of plan out your week and potentially note down every little thing that you need to do, especially to cover everything on the sales front as well.
Yeah.
Cool. So you've said a lot of fantastic stuff. I think I didn't expect you. Obviously, I know that you're a very experienced sales trainer and sales coach, but I think there's a lot of like very specific things that you've shared today that could be very beneficial to any sales people or sales managers listening. What would be, if you had to summarize everything you've said in 3 key points, what would they be?
Well, I guess the first thing is really understand your marketplace. That's where it starts. Focus, focus, focus.
Yeah.
And don't be too niched down to one, but you need to have multiple options, but not too many. And then, I guess going back is, really look at how you're using your time. Really look at how's your sales team using their time. Because again, as salespeople, and I'm really focused on that part of it, the business is all we have is time, right? Is how are we using our time? Are we using our time efficiently? And then the third piece is, how effective are you in doing what you're doing during that time? Okay, so are you doing the most efficient thing at any given time with the right people? Okay, and secondly, how effective are you at doing that? And sometimes we don't really pay enough attention to those things. Who is it you're going after? How effective are you? Efficient are you with your time? And then how effective are you when you're doing that? To really understand, listen, am I really helping these people the right way? Or am I doing the right things with the right people? Or am I just not the right person? Or I don't have the right person? Because sometimes they just default right immediately to, I guess I didn't get the right person. Well, is that the case? Or you just didn't set them up the right way?
Yeah. Well, a lot of great knowledge and insights shared. So I appreciate that, Ken. Thanks for coming on. It's been, I mean, even for myself to learn all of this stuff, a lot of the sort of sales team and sales tracking stuff, it's very beneficial even for me to hear, as well as for anyone listening, for anyone in the sales teams and SaaS or manufacturing companies. So thanks for coming on, Ken. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. It was great. It was
Good
great.
stuff.
Good
And
questions.
for the listeners, thanks for listening in. If you're on YouTube, thanks for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, actually, you might have had the pleasure of seeing a little lizard up over here. I saw it going around earlier. So hopefully you didn't miss that. But yeah, thanks for listening. Stewart Mathieson meets Ken Cheo today. Successful sales coach based out of Boston. So it was great to hear the accent as well. That was one thing. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Ken, and thanks for listening as well.